All right. What's up? What's up? Good evening, everyone. This is another Truth Talks, and this one is an exciting Truth Talks. They all are exciting because they're all real conversations that can impact our lives and our community. But I'm especially excited about this one because it's about Black History Month. And so the amazing panelists are on here. I expect to learn a lot. I already know because I learn a lot every time I'm in the room with any one of these amazing individuals. Um, Before going into the touchstones and setting the ground and everything, I would like to have you all introduce yourselves if you can, and then we can get right into it. So we can start with Ms. Yolanda Lavender. If we can start with you, sister, please introduce yourself, what you bring to the table, and then popcorn it over to the next person, and we can keep it flowing.
Excellent. Well, what I bring to the table, that's a pretty loaded question.
I'm
But
sorry. I'm sorry. I I know that you bring so much to the community, and so there's a reason why you're part of this conversation. So I didn't mean for the question to be loaded, but tell the people why you're part of this conversation, basically, because it's not just because of ethnicity. Definitely not. So if you could just please.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much first for having me. I'm Yolanda Lavender. Wear many different hats in this community that I was born and raised into. So really grateful to be able to be in this space with all of these folks, all of you that have played very significant roles in my life, and so just grateful to share this space. And I just consider myself to be a just ongoing student, ambassador. I mean, I don't even know, champion, all the words you can think of for Black culture and moving forward, Black folks in general, and doing that with, my work, the service that I'm able to provide, with my artistry, just with my life overall. And so, yeah, that's why I'm a part of this conversation today, and looking forward to connecting with everyone, answering questions, all of that. And I will pass it over to Mr. Sid Ellis.
Hello, I'm excited to be here as well. I am Sid Ellis, and I am just a community servant who's been in Kalamazoo for over 30 years, originally from Detroit, but Kalamazoo at this time is my home. Like Yolanda, I've had many titles here in Kalamazoo. I can't keep a job, so I just keep on going. In any case, what I bring to the table is I'm Buddy Hanna's hype man, and I stick with that.
So I guess you kicking it over to me, right?
That's correct.
Hi, I'm Buddy Hanna, and like Sid and Yolanda said, I'm a community servant. I've worn many hats in the community. I'm honored to be here, to be a part of this panel with such distinguished people. I know them all, have worked with them all at some point, and is still working with some of them. And I'm happy to be here. And I guess what I bring to the table is my sincere interest and commitment to African American history and the history of our people. And now we'll turn it over to Dr. Michelle Johnson.
Thank you. I feel like I just want to be like, repeat. Love being on this panel with people who I love and respect and have worked with for, in some cases, over a decade. And I am born and in part raised in Kalamazoo. My family goes back 2 generations. My grandmother moved to Kalamazoo in the 1920s, then brought the rest of her family there. So, but I was also raised in Saginaw, so I got 2 identities for sure. But what I'm here in the capacity of, especially today, is as the public scholar for the landscape, the Historical and Cultural Landscape Project, where we're collecting information from across the Kalamazoo County. And so I bring that to the table, as well as just again, decades of work on, really going back to, I remember when it was Black History Week, and being excited about that in elementary school. And so to have a whole, albeit short month, is a wonderful thing, but it happens for me all year long, and from the 1700s up to the present.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. And I am your host. I am Ed Genesis, community organizer, racial healing practitioner, and the host for Truth Talks. And I didn't mean to load the question, Yolanda, but I did want to lift up that there was a specific, Emily and I meet and we check in about Truth Talks weekly. And we discuss not only the different topics that we'll be bringing to the community, but the different panelists that we know will bring it, for lack of better words, not just experts and data, but bringing your full human selves. And so I didn't mean to load the question, but I definitely brag on you all when I'm not. When you're not around, I'm definitely speaking highly of some of the work that I've witnessed, that I've had the opportunity of being in the same room with sometimes. And it's fascinating and amazing to me. So with no further ado, I want to get straight into the touchstones so we can get this conversation started. And so the touchstones are just a group agreement that we come together to have a respectful conversation. And this is what we use with TRHT Kalamazoo, which is Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Kalamazoo. And it is be 100% present, extending and presuming welcome. Speak your truth. Identify assumptions and suspend judgment. Respect and learn from silence. Maintain confidentiality. No language of the soul is privilege over any other language of the soul. Value feeling as much as knowing. No fixing, no saving, no advising. Trust the healing process, your own heart and the hearts of others. Listen deeply. When things get difficult, turn to wonder, and always by invitation. So with that, let's get ready to dive straight in. And the first question on the agenda is, what is Black History Month and why do we celebrate it? And I have to go over to Dr. Michelle Johnson, not only for your historical lens, but the fact that you started dropping jewels in your introduction.
Did I? I don't even know. What did I do? It's just second nature.
You just started dropping jewels instantly. So I appreciate it. What is Black History Month? Well, what does it mean to you?
You know, one of the things I do is I recognize how all roads come through Michigan or are connected to Michigan in so many ways when we're talking about Black history. And one of those places is really where Asala, what was now Asala, emerged with Carter G. Woodson in 1915, that came directly out of his experience at the Lincoln Jubilee that was held in Chicago in 1915 for a month from August to September. And so you have Black people from all over the country, but especially from Michigan, and we represented hard at that event. And this was the 50-year celebration of the 13th Amendment, not just, you know, emancipation, but the 13th Amendment, the sense that we were almost free. And so Carter G. Woodson is there with Ida B. Wells and Oscar Baker from Michigan. Lulu Williams, Jacob Johnson's great-grandmother, was there. They were all there celebrating this 50-year anniversary. And Carter G. Woodson leaves from there and establishes, I mean, it doesn't go right home, but within the next couple of months, he starts the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, which is now the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And I would love to look at all of the books that Carter G. Woodson, look that up. There's a huge list of his intense study of our experiences, our resistance, our economic systems, our educational systems, everything Black. Carter G. Woodson was doing it and was studying it and making it a field and understanding the the depth and the intricacy and the complexity and the importance of our history. And so it started with Black Negro History Day and then went up to week. And now we got a month, and I live Negro History Month all year long in honor of Carter G. Woodson. And we got something to do with that here in Michigan, at the very least, the inspiration and providing some of the energy out of which Negro History, Black History Month as a formalized holiday came out.
Thank you very much for that breakdown. I really appreciate that. And I actually have some readings, including The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. So definitely, and thank you. Well, when I'm born and raised in Gary, Indiana, and moving to Kalamazoo, I would frequent the Black Arts and Cultural Festival, and it was amazing. And Mr. Buddy Hanna would be around and would do like a lot of amazing things during then. And I know because I learned so much rich history from you, but again, for the audience and for today, what is Black history to you? What is Black history and what does it mean to you?
Well, I think Dr. Johnson gave us a very good background as to how it got started and such. Only thing I would add to that is the reason it was started, and that was being because for so long our history wasn't celebrated, it wasn't known, it wasn't exposed, we wasn't recognized for our achievements and our contribution to different things. So I think that's one reason why we continue to celebrate it, because we are continuing to make history. Even today, there's always a first. You hear somebody say, this is the first African American to do such and such and such and such. So we're still making history as we move along. To me, celebrating our Black History Month, it's a focus on that particular month, but it should be a kickoff to celebrating history, our history year round. But we focus on February, which is no problem. But I think we should continue things from February on, because we have such a rich history that we can celebrate all year long, and we need to expose people to all the achievements that we have made and continue to make. And the thing about Black history is that if we don't sell it and tell it, then it may not get told, and if it did, it may not get told the right way. So yeah,
thank you very much for that. I'm very mindful myself that Groundhog Day, President's Day, Valentine's Day, all this exists within this short month where we're supposed to have Black History Month. I'm very conscious that all these different things chop it up. So unless, like you said, Mr. Hanna, unless we are intentional with celebrating and representing longer than just February, then we definitely can get the short end of the stick, so to speak. Going over to Mr. Sidney Ellis, same question. What is Black History Month and what is it to you?
Well, I'll just piggyback on what the first two panelists stated, and that is something that we should do all year round. To me, what it is an acknowledgement of others saying that they're going to listen and watch and allow us to express our history. And what I mean by that is that, to me, it's as if, okay, we're going to let these Black people have this month, do their thing, express themselves. They can be free for this month. Before and after that, just chill out, So I'm just going to be, we said be transparent, so I'm just going to be transparent. When I was with the Black Arts and Cultural Center, I intentionally did not do a lot of stuff during Black History Month. Actually, I only did something if someone specifically asked me to be a part of it, because my point was that the Black Arts and Cultural Center celebrates Black history all the time. So we're not going to put everything in this month just for somebody else to finally see something that we're doing constantly. I mean, we continue to do our programming during Black History Month, but it wasn't specific to Black History Month, okay? And so It's important to me because our kids don't get educated about things on a continual basis. So this is a month that not just our kids, but non-Black kids get to hear and see some Black history. Now, the flip side of that is what is always been, people are only going to do what they want to do or show the history that they want to show. And so that's what the month is to me.
Great breakdown. Great breakdown. Thank you for that. I love how you said it, you intentionally didn't put a lot of emphasis on Black History Month when you were at the Black Arts and Culture Center, because it was year round. I love that. And thank you for representing. And last but not least, Ms. Yolanda Lavender, what is Black History Month and what is it to you?
Yeah, so I definitely echo everything that's already been stated, specifically the point of it being, just a part of my life and just all year round, always representing and celebrating a Black history. But I think just to also kind of reiterate what Sid mentioned, because I, had the honor of being passed the torch from Sid to be the executive director of the Black Arts and Cultural Center. And so with intention as well, waited for folks to come to us to ask about being able to be connected, which provided the opportunity, oftentimes during February to say, yep, we'll do this, or sometimes, no, we won't. And why don't you come and see us in April or come to the festival in July? So it always has been like a platform, Black History Month, and an opportunity to make sure that folks know that, no, this is happening all the time, not just during the month of February. So I appreciate it for that, for sure. And then I also just think about, so throughout my life, I can remember like being exposed even as a child to like Alex Haley's Roots and, going to the museum, and just my parents were always very intentional about making sure that I understood and experienced my heritage and culture growing up. But I also recognize that that's not necessarily the case for everyone. And so I also see it as my responsibility to, again, use this month as an opportunity to just, educate folks and encourage them to continue to celebrate year round, and for them to just, gravitate towards making it a part of their lives overall. So yeah, that's definitely how it sits for me.
I think that's awesome that you had that experience growing up, and it's so needed. It just makes me think of, I was born and raised in Gary, Indiana, which was predominantly Black, and Gary was one of the first 2 major cities to have a Black mayor. We had Black teachers, principals, everything, and I still learned about Christopher Columbus finding America, and a bunch of different things that were not true. And if it was not for my parent or for my mother, my grandparents, making sure that we got the real information, then we definitely would have missed a lot. So thank you for lifting that up. That's important. And it goes into the next part of, we know it's important for us culturally, race, family, different things like that. But why is it important? I know that's a imposing question, so to speak, but I believe it is important to the community. So I'm asking, why is it important to the community? Or if you feel like it's not important to the community and more important to just us, you could definitely say that as well. But so maybe let me re-ask, is it important to the community? I believe it is. And I believe it is because so much of our history has been hidden, not just not talked about, but purposefully hidden. And so I believe the community should definitely, the world should know our contributions and just everything else. Anything that's hidden is the first cousin to a lie. So uncover the lie and let's tell the truth. So we can start backwards this time and just kind of go into it. Yolanda Lavender, do you feel like it's important that the community know about Black history?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely do think that it's important. But I would say as well, I think, for Black folks, just intentionality around us wanting to better understand our own history. So, I really appreciate folks like Dr. Johnson who, I mean, I can go on Facebook on any given day and just be able to find facts about folks specifically around Michigan who have contributed to that culture. So I think that definitely is important for us again to be wanting to learn more about our own culture. But especially over the last year, I just continue to have this very I don't know, this interesting feeling that for white folks specifically and non-Black folks, that it's important for them to do their own work and research, and that Black History Month is not the time to come to Black folks and say, teach me about, all about who you are and, any of that. It's another opportunity for us to be confident, to let folks know that it's important for them. Google is for everyone, so they can get on and do their own research as well. But absolutely, I think that it's super important for the community to know about Black history, Black heritage, culture, all of that.
You broke that down very well. I really appreciate that. That's exactly how I feel with it's history. Period. We call it Black history because it's our history, but it's history, and so the community should know about it as well as anything else. So turning over to the historian, that is like you just said, Yolanda Lavender. Dr. Michelle Johnson does this sleeping, I'm sure. Wake up and please speak on. I already know your answer that yes, the community should know. So I guess I should ask you why. That's how I'll ask you the question. Why is this important for the community to know?
Well, first I want to say you're exactly right. I am sleeping this. I got a talk I'm doing for Detroit Public Libraries on Saturday, and I am sleeping 1805 in Black militias. So yes, this is how I live a lot. It kind of piggybacking off what Yolanda was saying too, is that our community needs our history, needs our conversations about the past, because all of our tools are locked up in our past, right? Like we have tried, we have exercised, we have been thwarted in the exercising of all kinds of solutions to the situations that we are in right now. We have put forward political solutions, economic solutions, cultural solutions. And so for me, what our history does is it provides these toolkits, these tools that we can address our current issues with. So the more we know about our past, the more we know about the skills and the talents and the visions and the steps. So we've gone through all of the steps for hundreds of years. And so that's why we need to have it, because it's our power, it's our capital. It's, we talk a lot about generational wealth, especially now, and we talk about that in in terms of land and property and money, but our history and the knowledge of who we are is our greatest wealth, because from that we can take, and we do take that, what we have done, and create and modify new narratives, new ways of being, and new hybrid solutions. And so for me, that's why it's so important, because it's like the Holy Grail, and volumes and volumes and volumes of Holy Grails leading us to, I think, a far better possibility for being on the planet. So we look back at those mechanisms that we've tried, and why did they thwart them, right? And so, like say, Black Wall Street. Any place where Black people have been has been Black Wall Street, right? And so what were the mechanisms people used to destroy those communities? And how do we prevent that in the future? Because we know they play out of the same old playbook decade after decade. And if we study that playbook, not just what they do, because we know what they do, but what we do, what we create, what we have the capacity to build, then that is the power of our history. And so that's why I continue to not sleep sometimes and delve into more records than anybody needs to be looking at.
Well, I swear we all appreciate that you look at the records and that you are such an amazing historian. Thank you for your work. What you just said is like so empowering. When we uncover the history, growing up, all I ever knew for a long time was the same rendition of different historical facts that were given to us. And because we were in Gary, we got a chance to see community people and we celebrated them. But going up the ladder, there were certain things I remember not hearing about Marcus Garvey until I was in high school. Malcolm X, junior high school, but still not in school. Definitely not in school, outside of school, and then you're able to. So, and then like you said, Dr. Michelle Johnson, when you find out that extra information, it's like, wow, it didn't just start on a slave ship and then we just wound up here. Wow, who knew? So thank you for lifting that up. And same question going over to Mr. Buddy Hanna. The community, do you think it's important, and why?
Well, I think it's important to the community as a whole, but it's more important to us as African Americans. It's important to the community they probably learn some things about us and they do whatever. I'm sure they tuning into this and they reading this and they looking at that because there's more Black TV shows on during February than any time. And when February is over, you go like, well, where are all these movies? Y'all ain't showing them now. So, and I'm under the same thought process as Yolanda is, that if you want to know more about us, then read more about us. I mean, I read about Thomas Jefferson because I was interested in Thomas Jefferson. Okay, I read about George Washington crossing the Delaware because I was interested. I read 1776. I read all of these things because I have an interest. I also read about China, Mao Zedong. I've read all of those because I have an interest in that. I want to learn things. So if you want to learn about it, fine. But I think it's more important to us as a community because for some of us as African Americans, this is the only time we hear about our history. Some of us don't even pursue our history as it should. Maybe this motivates other people to take more interest in our history and teach it to their children. So I guess I would use the example, is the Greek festival important to the community? Yes, it is. But it's more important to people of Greek ancestry. Is the Irish festival important to the community? Yeah, they come, they celebrate, they have a good time, but it's more important to the people of Irish descent because they're celebrating their history. They're celebrating that part of us. So it's more important to us, but yes, it's important that we share with the community to give them the opportunity to know more about us if they won't go read it, but it's important, but it's more important to us.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I knew we was gonna have a great conversation because you all bring such different, amazing perspectives. But that one right there was like you just hit me with one. So I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Sidney Ellis. But because of what you just raised up, Mr. Buddy Hanna, I have a spinoff question I have to ask y'all because that was kind of I appreciate that. Like. Yeah. So, Mr. Sidney Ellis, same question about the community.
I think it's I don't need to say anything else about our community that the others haven't already said. I think it's very important for the community at large is it shines a light on and it reveals truth of things. It gives them an opportunity to see the truth of things because they have been blinded by so much other stuff. Case in point, I am going to pump it up. The movie Judas and the Black Messiah. Okay. I watched the movie. I enjoyed the movie. So I'm having a conversation with my son, who's 23 years old. And he said that one of his white friends told him that all they knew about that the Black Panthers were evil, and that all they did was shoot at the police. And that's what they thought. That's what they were brought up on. That's what they saw on television or read in the newspapers. And so when Black History Month comes up and then they show this movie, people can really see what the Black Panthers was all about, if they watched it, because that's the other thing. Now, here's Black History Month. Do you take the opportunity to watch, or like others say, to read on your own, to search it out, to see what's going on? I mean, if this thought process has been in your life, have been all your life, when you get the opportunity to see something, are you just going to walk around with blinders on? Are you going to say, no, they're lying? Or are you going to give it an opportunity and find something out about something that you did not know? Myself and Buddy Hanna had the opportunity to perform the play The Meeting, which is a meeting about Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King. So most people their image of Malcolm X is in the window holding the rifle. That's been an image that people have seen since Malcolm X. And so that's some of the only thing that they know. And so they think, well, I want to be like Malcolm. He was violent. He didn't take nothing. We like, hey, whoa. We're in the classroom talking to white kids and Black kids who are college students. And we're like, look, that's not the only thing that Malcolm X was about. You need to go and read. You need to go and find out what he was all about. He wasn't just about violence or protecting his people. Of course, that was one of the things that we know him for, but they were doing some serious things to help upwardly mobile people, or help openly mobilize the Black community to progress and do things and to take control of their environment and their circumstances. But most people only see that one thing. So all they think is Malcolm was about violence. Malcolm was about this. He carried a gun, And so this month is important to reveal truth to people if people are open to receive it. And I think that's why it's important to the community, because it does shine a light on the truth about things. And as Dr. Johnson said, it reveals those truths about things that we have done for years. We're creators, we're creative, we're artists, we're performers, we're writers, we're scientists, we're engineers. And it shows those things because, quite frankly, most young kids who don't have an understanding of that, they don't think they can be that. So
you just dropped some knowledge, and I really appreciate it. And I'm going to take that time to say this. I have not saw the movie yet, but I look forward to seeing it real soon, probably this weekend, actually. But again, going back to growing up in Gary, which was right next door to Chicago, I do know that the movie lifts up the Black P. Stones and Jeff Fort, and that they also talk about Larry Hoover. And if anybody has received an email from me since I've been organizing for the last 8 years, then I sign off at the end of my emails: love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. This is what was taught to me by vice lords in Gary, Indiana. And throughout history, they got the label of just being gangbangers. You're a gang. The vice lord, the conservative vice lords, were actually established in the 60s as a way to assist the Black Panthers, along with the Black P. Stones and a lot of other things. And it was an organization that received government funding. But like a lot of other things, you had COINTELPRO during that time. You had a lot of leaders executed, a lot of people locked up, and then you had the drug game, capitalism that thrives. So you can't leave that out. But I wanted to lift that up, Mr. Sidney Ellis, because what you just said is so powerful. I recently, and this is a directly impacted 3 felony having black man boasting moment right here. I went from messing up to moving in my community, and I sat down with the city manager, a bunch of other people, and I said, I have an idea. And I said, I need y'all to hear me. I got this idea from the conservative vice lords and from the Black Panthers on a way that I think we can better our community. And I'm happy to say we just recently, we have the new implementation of block clubs in Kalamazoo that is going right with the city of Kalamazoo. They're giving $100,000 toward the initiative. We're starting with 5 blocks on the north side: William, Elizabeth, Cobb, North, and Burdick. And this is just a template that will go out throughout the rest of the city. And I literally told them I got this idea from watching the Vice Lords in Gary, Indiana, and my research on the Black Panthers. So thank you, Mr. Sidney Ellis, for bringing up that the things that we had, it didn't start bad, but nobody was reporting on them and talking about them. And by the time they did, the dominant narrative suggested that this is bad. And wow, I thank you for lifting that up. And the question that Mr. Buddy Hanna prompted me to want to ask about the community and the things that you lifted up, like from the Greek festivals to the Irish festivals, is when it is Black History Month or when it's the rest of the year, what does that look like for us? Because when we go to places, when I go to places and we see Chinatown, Little Italy, you see representation, and then you scratch your head and you say, well, where's my place? And parts of Detroit looks great because it's like, these are my people. And Atlanta looks like that, or when I go back home, but that's not the same as when you see the Irish festival and you see, well, there's representation that's familiar. Or when Mr. Buddy Hanna lifted up earlier, reading about Thomas Jefferson, it's a familiar name. So if you see a book, but if you see the Mansa Musa book, because it's an unfamiliar name, do you reach for it? What do we look like in the community, whether it's celebratory or non-celebratory? And that's just a question that's not on the agenda, but I'm just curious, like, what does that look like? And I'll start with Mr. Buddy Hanna.
I thought that was Sid question. Sid brought that up. Well, you know, I think, how can I say this and be politically correct? I ain't trying to be politically correct. I think it's important that everyone be proud of who they are, be proud of their history, and it's their job to uplift their history. I mean, yeah, we celebrate with other people and we do all of these things, but when it comes right down to it, we have to put ourselves out in the community. We have to make that exposure to people and provide information for them to either accept or not accept. And I'm talking about other people, you know. Dr. Johnson is constantly working on things. We're working on a project now together, and we're putting things out there for people to know about. Now, it's up to other people to accept it. Some people, I don't care what you put out there. Other people may say, well, hey, you know, I ain't interested in Black culture, you know. Well, hey, that's fine, you know. But I think it's important that we put ourselves out there, that we share our history, that we uplift our history, as you say, and make it available not only to ourselves, but to other people. But the main thing is for us to be celebrating this year round, you know. I think if you look at different ethnic groups, they celebrate themselves all the time. You know, they don't need, is there a Spanish History Month? You know, Hispanic History Month? Is there Asian History Month? I mean, they celebrate themselves all the time. We need to celebrate ourselves all the time. We need to be proud of who we are and the achievements and accomplishments that we made and celebrate that all the time. So it's up to us to put it in the community. It's there for everybody to see, everybody to learn, everybody to enjoy. but we need to put it out there and be more aggressive in how we see ourselves and how we present ourselves and what we do to expose our history.
Thank you very much for that. Dr. Michelle Johnson, what would some of that look like? Statues, art, like, you know, I'm coming over to you, Yolanda Live, and ask you some of the same. Like, what does this look like when we represent?
Well, I'm glad that Buddy talked about celebrating ourselves, because we need to celebrate our spaces. We need to celebrate our communities, our neighborhoods that have been historically there for us, and that we are in danger of, we are losing every day. We're losing a little piece of that property that were the places that housed our creativity, that birthed our visions, that established our organizations. And so, you know, y'all know that there's a significant conversation out there about redlining, and oftentimes what happens in that conversation about redlining is this kind of pathologizing our Black communities on the north side, on the east side, on the south side, saying that, you know, there's something wrong with them and therefore people need to escape them. And so that's why I want to come back to what Buddy's talking about in terms of celebrating not just our past, but celebrating our Black businesses, celebrating all of the people who are out there hustling that might have brick and mortar places or may not. They, you know, they got their hustle on the side, and we need to remember that that hustle on the side is part of what has sustained us all the time, from our kitchen gardens that we would create while we were enslaved to, you know, the people that were running Idlewild also had jobs too. And so we have to support and celebrate that entrepreneurialism that's within us, that has sustained us. We need to embrace the places that have nurtured us, and not be acting like there's something wrong with where we come from, because that is our power. And that constantly, that's what happens. That's what happened in the 60s, is this whole notion of urban renewal. It's them telling us that there was something wrong with our community. Let us take your land. Let us have your house. And so I think that when we do that loving of ourselves, that loving of those things that we create, in addition to our history, then we claim space for ourselves, and then you have an authentic place to engage in Blackness, right? So, you know, like you're talking about Chinatown, or, you know, other concentrated communities of ethnic experiences, we need to understand that we have that. We just need to keep investing in it and stop letting people tell us there's something wrong with it. Anyway, I feel real strongly about that. So
I know you do, and I appreciate it.
Yes, we need to have monuments and markers and all those places helping us tell the story. We need to claim the landscape, because we are constantly and have constantly been being erased from the landscape. And so yes, we need monuments and markers too in those places to all those people that have been carrying on these traditions for, again, I'll say it, centuries.
Thank you. And yeah, Ms. Yolanda Lavender, the same question. What would that look like in the community, representing wise?
Yeah, so definitely in the spirit of celebrating our spaces and where we come from. So I again grew up here in Kalamazoo on the south side in the Edison neighborhood on Hayes Park, and I intentionally it's been a year and a half since I had the blessed opportunity to purchase my first home, and I intentionally did so in the Eastwood neighborhood on the east side, right off of East Main. And I'm, grateful that I have had a chance to do that, to, be in the neighborhood, with the people. That's just a very important experience, especially for me and the work that I do, that I continue to be able to be connected to the people in that way. So I celebrate that and appreciate that. I think about, again, my experience growing up. Like, I can remember the Black Arts Festival in the 90s was like, just, oh my gosh, just an experience that I can remember having. So me and my siblings would go to Atlanta to visit with my grandmother every summer. And so it always felt like comparable to that kind of experience where it was just all of these, you know, Black folks everywhere, all of these African festivals, just, you know, all of those different experiences. So to be able to have something like that still, and again, when I was at home, like that meant something to be able to have that. So yeah, definitely for events like the Black Arts Festival, just to be like continuing on and for folks to still be able to experience that. Like my nephew has been able to be a part of that, and that's important for the history of our family that you know, the younger ones are able to experience that. I think about, you know, myself, Sid, I mean, everybody on this call and lots of other folks who have curated experiences specifically for our people, whether it's, you know, something that has to do with the arts or whatever it is, that have like led to another thing or like a spinoff of this or, you know, this thing over here. All of those moments and experiences are just so important. And I really do feel convicted about what Dr. Johnson just mentioned, that we have to really be comfortable and confident with celebrating those things and not letting people keep, you know, telling us that there's something wrong with it, or, you know, there needs to be this super high standard in order for me to support you, Black folks. Like, okay, why are you doing that for, you know, all the other people? So I think I feel convicted in that, and that just helps me to be encouraged to continue to celebrate and to continue, you know, that support, because that's what it looks like. To answer your question, that's exactly what it looks like.
That was a dope way to bring that back and say that's what it looks like, because they ask questions in organizing. Tell me what democracy looks like, and then the response is, this is what democracy looks like. And I was thinking how you ended that the whole time. I was looking at you all like, this is what it looks like as I'm looking at you all. This is what Black representation in the community actually looks like. And not just in February, because I see it all of the time, from so many different people that are just pushing through unapologetically, and just saying this is what it is, this is who I am, and this is what we do. I'm so proud to be Black, and I remember growing up hearing things like from other Black people, don't act your color. And I remember that being like, well, what does that mean? And me and my brother, we figured out we must be we must be something bad, and we're not. We're something powerful, you know, and just everything. And I embrace that and I feel that. So I just really appreciate all of you all's answers. And more than just the answers, I'm smiling because when Emily and I were talking about who would be on the panel, every name everybody that's sitting here literally were named. And it was like putting together an all-star like team. And it was like, what about this person? What about this person? And every time it was just more and more excitement. And so that's because I know you all represent 365 days of the year, and thank you for that. So I want to make sure we hit this last one on the agenda before Dr. Michelle Johnson and before Mr. Buddy Hanna has to leave, and that is, how do we recognize Black history in the making? So we come up with things, clothing lines, art, songs, but oftentimes, and this is one of the questions that I made sure that was on here, because oftentimes, especially as an artist, and Yolanda Lavender, you know this like I do, you haven't made it until somebody sanctioned you and they're non-Black. So your community will celebrate, they'll work with you, and they'll tell you, man, I'll be glad when you, and it's like, what I did is not good enough. And it could actually be something good. And you look up a year later and this person is, and you didn't recognize that. And oftentimes we wait for some validation that comes from somewhere else. And that's a trick to me. I believe the people that's non-talented came up with a way of, let's get all in the midst of this and figure out a way to, it's a great trick. You know, if I didn't have any talent or whatever, I probably would have came up with something like that too. How do I get in? But how do we recognize Black history in the making? Like when we see it, I'm seeing it now just on this. I'm in awe of you all. Just like period. I learned so much, but everybody doesn't take that like that. And so how do we, as a whole, lift one another up and start recognizing and telling other people to start recognizing our contributions now? So starting with Dr. Michelle Johnson, since I know you have to leave soon, let's.
Well, I love that question. I have a two-part answer to it. One of it is, the first part of it is like recognizing the people who are doing the things that we hold up and elevate in history. So the folks that are out there that have been out there protesting and then have been establishing programs, have been creating their whole new organizations amongst themselves. And I'm thinking about like Jovan Head and Samara Woolfolk, Khadijah Brown. We've got a generation of people who are doing the same thing that people that we hold up from the 1960s and the 1930s and the 40s. They're like, get behind folks who have a vision for a future, a respect for the past, and a passion for making change. And so, we always want to be on the right side of history, and we know the principles. We know what justice is. We know what we've been working for. And if we see somebody doing that, get behind them, support them. Donate to their organization, volunteer, sometimes just share what they're doing, because we need to see that. So I think that that's one of the key places. Buy the book from the Douglas Community Center, so to do that kind of work, supporting. And the other piece is, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk about, is Malcolm X has come up a couple of times in our conversation. And so many of us forget that Malcolm X was here in Michigan. He grew up in Michigan, that his mother was incarcerated at the Kalamazoo Psychiatric Hospital for almost 26 years before she was released, and then lived in Woodland Park Lake, just kind of north of Grand Rapids up near Idlewild. And so one of the things that's so exciting is that family has held on to the story of Louise Little, who was wrongly incarcerated. And I say incarcerated, right? She was an inmate in that hospital against her will. She was not crazy. She was experiencing postpartum depression, and her husband had been murdered by white absurdists, right? And she had a bunch of kids, and she was brilliant, and she spoke multiple languages, and she was tightly involved with the United Negro Improvement Association and knew Marcus Garvey. This was an incredible woman. And then 26 years she is in that place. And so we have some Malcolm X talking about it to some extent, but the family has identified the records, the hospital records from Louise Little's experience there, and has then published it in a Kindle book. And so I urge you to take a look out for it. It's called The Life of Louise Norton Little. And so right now, if you can even go to their Facebook page, and what they're doing is a daily kind of diary of what her experience was. So she was incarcerated there, I think a little under a month ago first. And so this book is looking at, so this is what, or this page is looking at, this is what Louise Little was experiencing today. Right. This is the day that she said, insisted on being called Black, not anything else. Right. And so my long-winded answer to that second piece is history in the making is us writing our own history. And when I say write, not just writing it, RIGHTING-ing it, like we're correcting the story, correcting the narrative, making sure people know the truth, and making sure that we know the truth about ourselves, because again, that truth is power, that truth is wealth. And so it's that two parts: support the people who are making the history, but also rewrite the history if it needs to be rewritten, or write it and speak it if it hasn't been told.
Wow. Thank you for that. I definitely will be looking that up myself. And before going over to Mr. Buddy Hanna, you urged me to share some truth with y'all. So this is real, and I'm not ashamed. I share it often in rooms where I'm talking to younger people. But Mr. Buddy Hanna remembers me when I moved up here. I was different. I was not an organizer. I was still in the streets, so to speak. But I had an urge to want to change and do something different. And I remember I went to the news agency with two cousins of mine, and I won't say their names for incrimination, but we went to the news agency and they would take books, magazines, and they told me this is the thing to do. Like, you steal some magazines and then we'll go on the parking ramp and we'll look at what we stole. And I was scared to steal, and I stole Malcolm X's autobiography. That's what I stole. And they teased me for it, and they was like, "Man, why would you steal that?" I had no idea what I was reading. I didn't even read it the first 6 months. I just took it because I didn't want to be ostracized for not stealing. But I knew if I got caught stealing something, I didn't want my mother to tease me for stealing something that didn't make any sense. So I was like I had to make a decision. And that was the decision I made. And I just thank you, Dr. Michelle Johns, for sharing that information, because it's like that's a part of my truth. Because, like, look at me now. I had no idea I would be community organizing and doing any of these things when I took that book, and had no idea other than the name. And like Mr. Sidney Ellis said, or it might have been Mr. Buddy Hanna, I forget, but the picture with the rifle, that's all that I thought about at the time, was the imaging that I saw. And, but the book, yeah, it definitely impacted me. So, Mr. Buddy Hanna, how do we recognize Black history in the making? Or how do we get others to recognize Black history in the making? Your mic is muted. You're on mute, sir. Mr. Buddy Hanna, you are on mute. Okay, there you go.
Sid snuck over here and put me on mute. Okay, he don't want me to talk. but I was saying, first of all, I do know you. I do know where you came from. I remember the first time meeting you under the circumstances we met. But as the old folks used to say, I knew you had potential, boy. But no, I'm proud of what you've done and where you come from, because when you know somebody and see how they improve and make a positive contribution, then you can speak truth about them. And that's sort of the way it is with our history. When we know our history, and as Dr. Michelle said, that when we know the truth about our history, because my thing is that other people will tell our history, but they may not tell it the way we want it to be told. They may not put it the right way. They may not tell it the right way. So it's up to us. And as Sid and I think Yolanda both alluded to earlier, the Black Arts and Culture Center have always been a positive place to tell your history, to show things, to highlight our history in participation. Dr. Johnson, back when her and Denise Miller, Dr. Miller had Fire, that was another avenue for artists to express ourselves, to keep our culture alive, to keep our history alive. Now we have Face Off Theater. We do have people doing different things, in the community. And that's what it takes, is for us to keep that history out there, keep telling it the way it should be told, and not just let it go after February. You know what I'm saying? And the other thing is, when we're doing things like this, we need to continue these types of conversations long after it's gone. We have to have these conversations. I think Dr. Johnson and we had a conversation regarding the PI club that we touched on some of that, and we're going to have another conversation regarding that. But that was before February. We was having this conversation, and I think we need to continue to do these type of things. And yeah, other people, they should join in with us, but we should continue to uplift our history regardless, because it is our history. We should tell it, and these types of things need to be ongoing, these type of conversations. Already this month, I know Yolanda has been interviewed and rightfully so. She's been interviewed. She's been highlighted by the Boys and Girls Club, everybody in their play closet. That's fine. But let's highlight her also in July. You see what I'm saying? She still have made these achievements in July. It wasn't just February. So all of these things, everybody is highlighting Black history now. That's fine. I'm glad to see the more the merrier. But let's continue to do that. Let's continue to support Dr. Johnson in the things that she's doing. Let's get behind her and say, hey, I have some information, and let's share our history. We have a lot of local history that we people have, but they haven't shared it. So let's share our history, and therefore we can expand on it and make it more. So I think to answer the question, we have to continue to celebrate. We have to put it out there, and we have to support the people that's already doing that, and keep them out there doing it. Mr. Murphy Darden got a lot of history people don't know about. I mean, whoa, God, you go to the man house, it's like a museum. You know what I'm saying? I learned so much from him. Everything I learned about Black cowboys, I learned from Mr. Darden. So I think there are people out there who are doing things. I think Yolanda, somebody mentioned the fact that the book that the Douglas, Sid, and Sonia Hollins that put out. Read the book, get the book, y'all. It's so much history there. So many people that some of you know, some of you are related to, but it's so much, 100 years worth of history right there in that book. And all you have to do is go down there to the Douglas and purchase the book and support them. And by doing that, not only do we keep our history alive, we keep the organizations alive by supporting them. That's keeping the history alive. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. You gave some clear things that people can do too, and I really appreciate that. That's definitely how we can celebrate Black history in the making. Mr. Sidney Ellis, same question.
So our people need a paradigm shift, because the four of us and you, Ed, of course, I met you a couple of years ago, but I've known the other people on the panel for years. One of the things that was funny to me, but it opened my eyes when I was at the Black Arts and Cultural Center. A doctor moved into town, into Kalamazoo. She started getting involved. She started going to things. And after about a year, she said, Sid, every time I go somewhere, I just keep seeing the same people. And I'm like, yeah, because it's those same people who are doing things all the time. That 80-20 rule, 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work, and then the other 80% of the people are not doing anything. So what does that mean? As a people, we have to, like others have said, open our arms and take ownership of what's going on in Kalamazoo with Black people. Because one of the things I know everybody on this panel has heard, oh man, that happened last week. Oh man, I missed it. That's because you wasn't paying attention. We sent you a flyer. It was on Facebook. I told you when I saw you at Walmart, and then you like, oh man, and just to be quite frank, what does people always say? Ain't nothing happening in Kalamazoo. There's always something happening in Kalamazoo. You just not paying attention. You got to wake up and be open and embrace it. Now, like I said, that's a bunch of other people. Now, what do we have to do? we have to actually sometimes hold their hand and say, come on, let's go. I'm going over here, you know, especially Black men. I'm going to say it. As Black men, we got to invite more Black men to different things that's going on to enlighten them. And that's not to say that Black women are the only ones who support things, but the three of brothers that's on this panel know it's some brothers you got to literally take them by the hand and take them to something, you know. And so I openly embrace that. One of the things I like about you, Ed, is that I always see you with young people and not just your sons, not just your kids. I see you with other people's kids at events, you know, so you're helping to educate the young men and women who are not just Black, because you have some white kids that you support and that you work with. And so it would be important for us to continue that. And I think all of us, to a certain extent, I know, that Dr. Johnson, Mr. Buddy Hanna, Sister Yolanda Lavender, we've all embraced that in a way that we try to get more people involved in things. And so we have to keep doing that. We have to keep doing that. But we also have to, we really have to make a major emphasis on our youth, on our kids. One of the things that I want to mention is that a buddy of mine who is in Muskegon, he sent me an email about this young Black man named Titus Kafar. I believe I'm pronouncing his last name correct. Titus Kafar. Titus Kafar, born and raised in Kalamazoo, after he left, that's when he started getting big into art. Now he's a well-renowned artist, Black artist. And most people in Kalamazoo probably don't know who he is or anything about him, you know. Now, there's no one answer to why that is. Okay, there's probably a lot of different myriad of things that we could say to explain that. Here's my point. Young man grows up in Kalamazoo, moves from Kalamazoo, becomes famous for something that he could have been doing here in Kalamazoo. Now, so whether it's art, science, or what have you, we're not exposing our youth to the richness that is here in Kalamazoo. You know, and so that's one of the things that we have to do intentionally, is exposing our youth to things that's happening here in Kalamazoo. Emphasis on learn about the Black history that's in your backyard. Okay. So many of these youth, they're walking around that may be lost or whatever. You know, they're not all necessarily lost, but what I'm saying is they don't know who they are because they don't know, oh, I'm related to Moses Walker, who was one of the most influential Black men in Kalamazoo. You know, oh, I knew Buddy Hanna. When I was young, Buddy Hanna helped teach me something. You know, various things like that. There's history, there's a rich history in Kalamazoo, whether it's the Douglas Community Association, whether it's the Black churches, whether it's the NAACP, that we're not talking about and we're not pumping up. I think that in the last few weeks, one of the things that has been good on Facebook is they have been acknowledging some Black local heroes, more so than I've ever seen during Black History Month. I see more celebration of local Black heroes here in the Kalamazoo area. That's very important. That's very good. And so we have to continue to share that information, you know, in any and every way that we can. But one of the main things I think that we need to do is make sure that we are teaching our young people about the local Black history so they know where they came from. So they know that the Kalamazoo, the north side of Kalamazoo, the east side, when Buddy mentioned the PI Club, those things used to be hopping. Most people don't probably know the PI Club was a private Black club. Now that's a whole nother thing, but you know, these brothers and sisters were serious about their business. They wore ties, tuxedos, private event. You know, it cost money to get in here, to go in there and have a good time. It was high society, you know. And I'm not saying that they need to know that we high society, but they need to know that we do experience that we're not just brothers and sisters who just have middle-class jobs. We're people that have a lot of money and do a lot of different things, whether it's skiing, whether it's tobogganing, hang gliding, whatever it is. A lot of local people are doing things here in Kalamazoo that will show you how progressive Black people really are. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, you broke it. Yeah, you dropped some jewels. You know you did. And I appreciate it too. You really honed in on something that I want to lift up to everyone, if that's cool. And I hope y'all got just a couple minutes real fast. So that was amazing. And Dr. Michelle Johnson, you lifted this up earlier about Idlewild. I had the opportunity to go to Idlewild, Michigan, and it's a straight shot. It's like right there, not even a full 2 hours really. But the majority of the people that I talked to in Kalamazoo have not been. And like myself, before I went, I only knew about Idlewild through the movie that Outkast did. And they made it seem like a fictitious place. And it was rich in history. The movie's great. It's a great movie. It's musical and all of that. But to go to Idlewild and talk to the people, just it blew my mind. So when we're talking about being intentional and about our history and the fact that we have such rich, there was a young lady there that she was an older lady, but respectfully a young lady. She told me that not only the Flamingo Club, so she showed me that, and you still had like the Four Tops, you still had like it just was mind blowing to see the people that performed, but right across the street, the most beautiful beach. And she said, nobody comes. Everybody goes to South Haven. And she said, I don't know if they don't know about it or it's not popular, but it just, so as exciting as excited as I was just like, oh, not again. Like, so I just wanted to lift that up. And I want to kick it over to you, Dr. Michelle Johnson, because you touched on Idlewild earlier. And then just piggybacking off what Mr. Sid Ellis just said about, we can be a lot more intentional. It's all around us. Like he just said, it's there. People talking about it, they seeing it. What are we doing? And your answer doesn't have to be specific to Idlewild, but that was just what I thought about just listening to Mr. Sidney Ellis and the fact that you mentioned that earlier. How can we be more intentional, I guess is the question, when it's right there in our face, or we can Google, or they have sites on Facebook that'll say what's happening in Kalamazoo. What's the excuse?
I'm not going to answer what's the excuse, but I will say that one of the things that we can do is, because Idlewild does still exist. It's a little bit hard to travel now is rough, but Idlewild exists. Woodland Park Lake. We had multiple Black resorts here in Michigan. Woodland Park Lake is just southwest of Idlewild, and that's where I mentioned Louise Little and her family residing there for 26 years. They still got property up there. Down along the St. Joe River in Three Rivers, that was a Black resort. There were all kinds of little cabins and resort spots along the river owned by Black people. We Brandy Peterson, you all know her from Colorful Roots, right? Her family, Ralph Humes, the former bass player for the Movement and the chef for his business in Traverse City. I mean, not Traverse City, he used to be in Traverse City, back in Three Rivers. Those are families rooted specifically in the history of Black-owned land in Three Rivers. So we support, then, this is what it looks like, support Brandy, support Ralph, support those folks that have been holding it down. Go down to Cass County, try to buy some property with some folks in Cass County down around Paradise Lake. And we may not all be able to do it individually, but we surely can do it collectively. And so I think one of the ways that we do this is we take back space. We have to continue to take back space on the north side, on the east side. Like, I love that Yolanda made a very conscious decision and a commitment that, you know, resonates through her whole life, but to move on the east side, and it's to take those spaces back and to claim them for ourselves and for an articulation of our rich history. So, and you know, go there and, you know, go to Woodland Park Lake and stop at the restaurant and eat, right? It's Black owned. And so these are all kinds of ways that we can enter in. There are multiple strategies that we can engage in to make this, you know, not just some kind of pie in the sky. Shit, go to Detroit, you know, go to the northwest side of Detroit and support the businesses on 7 Mile and on 6 Mile and on Greenfield, you know, like this isn't some like past, it is a past, right? Come to Saginaw, you know, and support the Black businesses there. And it's not all about economics, and it's not, I'm not saying that it's all a capitalist model of success, but these are still folks that are sustaining themselves and sustaining us if we support them. Support Black Wall Street Kalamazoo. And the businesses that pop up there all the time, people's new visions and people's established businesses. It's just, you know, we need to put our, whatever little bit of money, you know, our little $5, our little $2, our little $50, whatever it is, you know, pour it back in, because it will come back to us, not just in services and goods and experiences, but pride.
That was a dope way to put that. Thank you for that. Not just in goods and services, but in pride, just to be able to say, yes, I helped put that up there like that. I learned from a guy, an older gentleman, about stocks recently. I just been into the stock game in August, and he explained to me that that's a good, you know, get into that, but also be very mindful of things coming from the ground up, especially when they're Black owned businesses, and you can just grow them like Carol's Daughter products. And I've been really mindful of that. So thank you for that. And just continuing that conversation, the Idlewild, the whole piece of that, the how rich we are with history around us. How can we be more intentional? And going over to Ms. Yolanda Lavender, how can we take advantage? We are in, you know, COVID crisis right now, but even Googling some of these things and learning more about it would serve a lot, because there's a reason why Outkast chose Idlewild for that rich history. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I do gotta say the people from Idlewild are like, that movie had nothing to do with Idlewild. They would get mad at you if you say it can make any kind of connection. So I'm just trying to save you from those old heads.
I found out. Trust me, I found out the hard way. You are so right.
Yes, I was thinking like, okay, maybe we should separate those two. So I think, you know, I would just echo that, supporting definitely with our dollars, making sure, like Sid said, that, you know, the next generation understands the history of places like Idlewild. All of that is super important. I've heard, you know, Black Wall Street Kalamazoo brought up, absolutely supporting them, Sisters in Business, supporting them. And then I just think of all the other businesses and folks who like branch off of even those like hubs really for Black businesses in Kalamazoo. But I really, really think that it's important, much like Sid mentioned, in terms of teaching the youth about their history and all of that, that we have to be more intentional about supporting what they are doing. So I mean, I can't even tell you, like my nephew has a lawn care business. I mean, he has clients and like expense reports and just all of this stuff at 12, 13 years old. I think about Layla's Cool Pops, like she has a brick and mortar, a nonprofit organization. So, you know, a lot of times I feel like we, as adults, don't necessarily give young folks enough credit for their brilliance. And so we really have to do a better job of supporting them, listening to them. Oftentimes it's going to require that we move out of their way and let them do what it is that they need to do to be successful, and that we really just support them in a different way. I mean, I think about all that all of us have experienced, especially Black folks, other marginalized groups over the last, year up to this point. But I just can't even imagine as a young person, like all of a sudden, so many things in your life are just different. You're doing school virtually. Then folks want you to do after school stuff online too. Just all of these different pieces. And these young people are still running their own businesses in the midst of all of that and coming up with ideas. I listen to podcasts and I'm hearing about young folks who are using their lemonade business to like feed the houseless population in their communities. It's like, I was not thinking about that when I was 13 years old at all. I was at like somebody's slumber party or something. So I think we really have to be a lot more intentional about respecting the brilliance of our young folks, about supporting them. And, we need to just humble ourselves and know that sometimes that's going to require that we just, move out of the way. That's the way that we continue to just sustain this idea of, the pride in being Black and just our history and culture and heritage, and just continuing to preserve all of that. It's going to show up with how our interactions are with the young people.
I love that you said that about the youth, because like Mr. Sid Ellis said, I definitely try to be intentional about listening to what the youth have to say, because they genuinely are the future, and they don't have a lot of the hangups that adults have, a lot of the blocks, a lot of the I can't dream that big because of this. So their dreams are just, let's do this. And you have to really, I try not to be the adult that tells them, well, you can't do that. Let's figure it out. My mother used to always tell me, well, yeah, you can do that, or you can draw and you can try it. And so I try to give that same thing. So thank you for lifting that up. And then going right back over to Mr. Sidney Ellis, the things that you lifted up prompted that last piece, which was very, very powerful. And we got some extras from you all, and I really appreciate that. And those are the things that go into the next steps when we think about our community. How do we show up being intentional, remembering these type of conversations and saying, okay, what can I do next? And so just going back over to you, Mr. Sidney Ellis, and then rounding this out, yeah, we're pretty much at our time. We got the template. We know pride is there. We know that we're actually in a state and a city that's full of rich history. We know that the information is there. We know that unless that we show up, it's not going to happen. Like, somebody's not just going to knock on the door and say, hey, this is your, stand there, let's take this picture. We're going to put it out there. Like, but I would be remiss if I didn't say, anybody that comes out of town visiting, and whether it's downtown or whether it's different places, I always get asked the same thing. And that is, man, you like, where's our section, or where's like our part, or where's like what? And after a while, after you talk and you get through the nuances of, well, what are you looking for? Once we get through that, because I remember coming up here and searching for another variation of Gary, when in reality, I didn't want another variation of Gary. I wanted familiarity. So once we get through that, a lot of people are like, oh, this is where it's happening. But I guess the last thing that I want to say is, and this is probably a part 2 type of thing, but to me, Black no longer is the chicken shack, the liquor store, and the guys hanging out. And then I say, oh, okay, this is my section of town. You can drop me off right here. I'm cool. But it used to be for me, how I identified. And if you talked proper, if you tucked your shirt in and different things like that, then I was like, well, you're not Black enough.
Mm-hmm.
While we're bringing up so many celebratory things and so many things like that, just that I want to end with just that last signing off on, if the history is hidden and a lot of people don't know, like you lifted up earlier, sir, a lot of people, a lot of the youth, they don't know. They walk around and trying to figure it out, especially the young men a lot of times, because you have the extra layers of macho and masculinity, sometimes toxic masculinity, all these different layers. I guess how I want to frame it is strictly with the identity factor. Like when we get there and we arrive and we say, well, I'm proud to be Black, and you don't want to take away somebody else's pride, but it's like, come with me on this ride and learn a little bit more, because we're so much more than that, or so much more than a pocket on a side of town. And I know I just said a whole lot, but how do we bring our identity to the full front, but without, all of us are different just right now, and all of us show up differently, but that doesn't take away from the celebration of Black history, our pride, nor the building, but oftentimes in rooms, just the smallest and yet the biggest for me recently has been the Black African American talk. So it could just be something like that, and it'll just divide. And it's like, well, you go celebrate over there, I'll celebrate over here.
Mm-hmm.
So just holding dear to our identity, our pride, but at the same time, not alienating others, understanding why we are probably so isolated and chopped up anyway. And just, I hope y'all following with me, because I just went a little heavy, but it's what came up as just listening to all this love, all this celebration. It's that other side of that identity and how different people identify. So I'm sorry, but there you go, Mr. Ellis. That's it. That's all for you.
All right. I think we've sort of said it, and that is we have to be unapologetically proud of who we are, and embrace who we are, and embrace the so many different variations of who we are. You said it. Some people want to say Black American. Some people want to say African American. Some people say you too Black. Some people say you're not Black enough. How about we just accept each other for who we are? I mean, I'm 57 years old. I don't mind saying it on the air. And all my life, I've seen the variations from light skin, Dr. Michelle Johnson, all the way to myself. So there's so many different shades of who we are, and so many different variations of who we are, but we're still who we are. And we have to be unapologetically accepting of who we are, and not afraid to talk about it, and not afraid to be it, and not afraid to embrace it. Because the reality is that there's some Black people who stopped going to the Black Arts Festival. Why? There was just various things that has happened at the festival that have turned people's heads or whatever. But why would you stop going? Whether it changed locations or not. And that's the other thing. The Black Arts and Cultural Center Black Arts Festival has been in like 6 or 7 different locations. And no matter where it still was the Black Arts Festival. So it still was what these people over 30 years ago decided to start, and can continue to evolve into what it is now. And so we shouldn't be ashamed of that, And so how do we change it? We have to accept who we are and accept everybody else for who they are, accept that what you see as Black art may not be as what somebody else sees as Black art. Just painting a portrait of somebody that's Black, anybody can paint a portrait of somebody that's Black. Does that mean it's Black art? Yes and no. Yes, because it's of a Black person, but no, if a Black person didn't do it, but how do we know who that Black person is? So I had a young artist from the Kalamazoo College, from K College, who was presenting some art. When she first came into the Black Arts and Culture Center, I didn't know she was Black. I thought she was white. And one of the things that she said to me, she asked me if I knew what she was, because she was struggling with being this light-skinned Black woman that nobody recognized as being Black. And I said, look, sister, you just told me you are, so I accept that you are. I didn't recognize that you were. Now I know, now I accept you as that. She still was struggling with it. But what I'm saying is we often don't embrace each other as being Black because we have our thought process of what is Black. And so we have to accept each other. We have to just be open and continue to support. That's one of the main things we've been talking about throughout this conversation. Support each other in any and every way that we can. And so there's a lot of things going on. We are in COVID, but even through the Zoom calls and things like that, supporting those things, embracing those things. And so I say that one of the things about 2020 that was brought out was an awareness of what has been going on to Black people for years, to the non-Black audience. So the non-Black audience now has seen, okay, this is really what's going on. They didn't know it. They didn't realize it, and they wasn't accepting it. Now they have embraced that to a certain extent. Some of them have, because some still think that, it's not true. But what has happened is not only brought an awareness to the non-Black people, it made Black people stand up and say, I want to do more. What can I do? How can I help? Now I'm ready to stand up and have my back straight and do what I've been called to do and do what I have the potential to do. And so we can't let the momentum die down. We have to keep that momentum going on and going on. A train is faster once it gets its momentum going. But the first time a train starts, it takes off slow. And right now we're still going slow. We're still going slow, but we got to keep it going. We got to keep it going so that momentum will help speed up this train of us coming together and accepting each other for who we are, and us putting each other in an opportunity and a place to really maximize the potential of our young people.
Yeah, wow. Thank you. That's why I appreciate knowledge and wisdom from my ancestors that make sure they look out for me, because you definitely did on that one. I didn't mean to ramble. My thoughts were there, but you took them and just whipped them up and was like, this is what you're saying. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Just sounding off the last on that same tip, even though Mr. Sidney Ellis like really hit it home with that, I just want to make sure that I get you all's input on that last piece of that identity and how we could be more intentional with that. And definitely don't want to mess up what he just said, so I'm not going to ramble again. So Miss Yolanda Lavender, if you could chime in on that, please.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would add is I've just been reiterating for myself that more than one thing can be true. And so us all really acknowledging that. I mean, I don't even think about my own experience growing up in the Black church and how, just the information about that not necessarily being the case was always taught to me. And just the unlearning that has had to happen specifically with that more than one thing can be true. So I think about us embracing that thought, and then also having conversation and dialogue. I mean, I've been learning over the last year quite significantly that it just clears up so much when you're willing to have dialogue with folks about whatever it is that's coming up. Like, let's just talk about it and get it out in the open, figure out where one another are. Sometimes we might agree, sometimes we might not agree, and both of those things are okay as well. So yeah, I really think us embracing that more than one thing can be true and being willing to lean into conversation with one another is the way to go.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. And closing it out, Dr. Michelle Johnson.
And along those lines of the multiple experiences and multiple ways of being, I think about how, you know, most of the places that I grew up in, Saginaw and Chicago and in Kalamazoo, they're all, you know, when I look at research, they're all called ghettos, right? And, you know, where I grew up on the South, all the places, but these were also the places where I saw all of these layers of Black experience, because you had doctors who were living in the same neighborhood with numbers runners and beauty salon operators and people running the grocery store and running the, you know, running the little side business and restaurants and movie theaters. And so we had a diverse kind of, for lack of a better word, class experience in our neighborhood. So we got to see, I got to see, and the people I grew up with got to see us in all these different places right there in our neighborhood. And I'm not saying, you know, and I know that there's segregation in part involved with that, but there was also, again, an embrace and a love of ourselves and our love of our community. And we could love it even better because we could see our place, ourselves in various different roles and various different relationships to community and building. And so I think that so hearkening again back to history and understanding what we can learn from that, I think that that is something that we kind of elevate again. Is it's okay to live with Black people, and it's really okay as Black people to live with Black people. Right. And so we have the chicken, like, so, you know, I think about Riverview, and Riverview in the past, there was the Pacific Club, and then there were other restaurants too. We need to have the high end, you know, the place where you got the, you know, have to look good and well, I don't know. I'm not all for that really, but, you know, the tablecloths are nice. You know, so where there's tablecloths and there's places where you won't ever see a tablecloth. And so we need to have that diversity and recognize that we've always had that diversity. We've had bougie Black people from the 1700s. Remember what's been keeping me awake is the bougie Black people from the 1700s and the 1800s. And so we've always had that, and we still have that as bougie Black people, middle class Black people. We need to come back. We need to come back into our communities and invest and be present, and not accept that notion that somehow it's a ghetto. Or love it as a ghetto and redefine what a ghetto really is, because those ghettos that people were calling, those were sources of power, such power. And so I think we need to take back our power.
That's a mic dropper right there. Yeah, take back that power. I definitely appreciate that. You described my community in Gary. Definitely. Yeah. Thank you all so much. We went over, but it was a great going over. Thank you all so much for your contribution to this conversation. I definitely learned a lot. I was taking notes. I knew I would, though, so I had my pen and paper ready. I already was ready. So thank you all. I really appreciate this. And yeah, have a great day and peace.